I'm going to stand as like a moderator. You should just it doesn't go any further. I'll be leaning in casually. Hi everyone. Thank you for coming. This is the Adventure Time panel, and we're going to talk about Adventure Time and comics and cartoons and all sorts of stuff. It'll be fun, and let's begin. So I'll introduce everyone. At the far right, you have Braden. He does art on the comic. Past him to my left is Shelli, who also, you can introduce yourselves, this is probably better. Oh, okay. Like, say hello and...
Hey.
Hi guys.
That's us, that's accurate.
All right, Mike, you're up.
Cool.
Hello.
What do you do, Mike?
I'm Mike Holmes. I drew a couple issues of Adventure Time, and I'm currently the regular cover artist, and I draw Bravest Warriors as well.
Woo! Meredith.
God, spoiler alert. I'm Meredith, obviously. I wrote and drew Marceline and the Scream Queens.
I'm Michael. I work on the show, doing props and effects, and I drew a backup in the comic.
I'm Steve Wolfhard. I'm a storyboard artist and a writer on the TV show.
I'm Danielle Corsetto, and I did this book that didn't make it here, unfortunately, but it's called Playing with Fire. I didn't title it, so I kind of forgot what the title was, but it's about a flame princess, and it will be out hopefully this week. Woo.
And I'm Ryan, and I do writing for the comic. All right. Let's begin. So I thought before we opened up to questions, we'd sort of have a bit of a discussion amongst ourselves. And I was wondering what you all think is an Adventure Time.
Thank you for asking that, Ryan.
Establish your baseline.
No one has any ideas.
It was a serious question.
It was a serious question.
It's the mystery behind the whole thing.
Yeah. There it is.
I mean, I think, adventure is sort of this vague thing to be excited about, and instead of constantly having all times be adventure time, it seems prudent to make a specific time.
I thought you were going to go somewhere with that, talking about how the show has this adventure in it, and the comics too, but there's also elements of sadness and regret, remorse, sorrow. There's a darkness to the multi-platform media franchise that is evident, but you didn't touch on that, so I can't really spin off from there. Shelli.
Yes.
When I send you scripts, you and Braden usually make them better I've always made them better actually, you never make them worse. The first comic we did, I had a page layout that I like this. So the panel goes like this, and there's this panel here, and I did the whole page layout, and they totally ignored it. And I got the finished comic back, and it was way better than what I had written in terms of layout, and they added some jokes too. And so I felt like I dodged a bullet. And since then, I've never put in any page layouts. Just say, here's your 6 or 7 or 4 or 5 panels, and just go nuts. And do you like that? Because I've been doing it for a long time now.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. It does help us.
It's because the show is I mean, we haven't really had much contact with people who work on the show, but maybe you guys can speak to this. The storytelling is so visual that that it does help that we have a hand in showing how the story unfolds on the page. If that
yeah, and we're absolutely not interested in doing like 6 panels, like a very standard comic storytelling style, and I sometimes appreciate that. And like, you know, a comic like Bone, it works really well, but we didn't want to exactly make it look like we're sort of framing it in the same way as the show, because we could do so much more, and we could do like splashes and, you know, long panels, and that's all about designing the page. So we're happy to like have that opportunity.
Glad to hear it. Mike, you mentioned doing props. Is it the sort of thing where there's a script and they'll say, I need like a devil's hand in this scene, or do you sort of decide what you want to have show up?
That'd be awesome if I could just freestyle it all the time. No, I get a board, and then the whole design team just works off the board, and yeah, depending on how important the prop is or how much guidance the board artist gave, we have a certain amount of leeway. And but yeah, it depends. Like Steve's boards are like super clean, so it's sort of like I'm just inking your stuff. But other people's, it's looser. Yeah.
And you like it when it's looser?
No, I like it when I'm just like not doing work. Yeah, you like it when you do all the work.
Really? Oh, I was feel bad about that.
And I've heard the process of doing the boards is pretty collaborative between the writers and, like you said, you're a storyboard artist and a writer. And is there a clear distinction between the two, or is it more sort of a spectrum?
Yeah, no, not really. Like, we usually just start with an outline that was written by Penn and Adam and Kent and Jack Pendarvis. And yeah, no, we tend to do all the dialogue and come up with any of the designs that we need sort of on the board. It's pretty inclusive. Just doing comics, more or less.
Yeah. That's good.
Was that,
no, this answers my question. That
okay, I
wasn't
wasn't sure. I was wrong.
It's funny, I was walking with Steve last year, and we were talking about Adventure Time. It was at a party, because we're cruel people who party all the time. And at the party, he was saying, you know, there's this episode coming up where, like, Jake has puppies. It's so messed up.
Yeah, no, I wasn't supposed to tell anyone about that, but I kept talking about it. I kept drawing them out for people. Yeah.
So are there any other secrets you can't share that you can now tell an audience?
That I'm not allowed to share?
Yeah.
No, I'm better at that now.
Oh.
I keep no, I used to be real bad. I would tell everyone about the puppies, and I'd tell everyone about Finn getting older and dying in an episode, the boy, and all that. I'm sewn up now.
Oh, we can talk later.
Yeah. Yeah, there's good stuff coming.
Meredith, when you were doing the Marceline spin-off, how much direction did they have for, like, this is the kind of thing we want? Like, we want Marceline, and we probably want Princess Bubblegum. Did they give you anything else, or did you just sort of have free reign?
I pretty much had free reign, but when I spoke to Shannon, my editor, she made it pretty clear that she wanted it to be about Marceline's band and that Princess Bubblegum should be involved somehow. And it was her suggestion that Bubblegum manages the band, and I thought that sounded perfect, and that, you know, a band touring was a perfect opportunity to do one location per issue. So I really just went with the idea that Shannon had come up with and expanded on that.
Nice. Mike, I now have a question for you.
Okay.
You did a lot of covers for the book that I do, and often the covers don't really relate to what's inside. I wonder how you address this charge.
I thought we'd already talked about this. No. Well, I think if anybody knows about how everything works in the comics world, is that you don't write the scripts months in advance, but unfortunately books like previews need the covers well in advance, and Boom needs to get those out. So when Shannon asked me to start doing the covers on issue 13, I said, good, what's the story inside? She's like, oh, we don't know that. We're not going to do it for a while. So I was like, can I do anything? And she's like, yeah, go nuts. And so I've done 7 covers, and I've never gotten a single note on them. And the way I approach the covers, or I discovered after doing 3 of them, was that I basically like to treat the cover like it's a little mini episode where like a bunch of stuff is happening. And I realized that promises something that the issue may not be able to pay off.
This is my complaint.
Yeah, so
really
that's
cool
a totally fair complaint. But can I counter that by saying I'm having a lot of fun? So, yay for me. Like, it worked.
That disparity between the cover and the publication time is why so many Marceline covers have Princess Bubblegum in the band, because they were given the same vague idea that Shannon gave me, and then we're told to draw this before I'd even submitted the first script.
Right. Danielle, what can you tell us about Playing with Fire out soon? Out now?
Out now, supposedly, yeah.
Out supposedly
I don't actually
now.
even know what date it comes out, but I have one of them, so I know that it's
And
actually
you wrote it, right?
I only wrote it. The amazingly talented Zach Sterling drew it, and I think he actually works on the actual show, but I'm not sure.
No, he just did the colors for the first arc of Bravest Warriors.
Oh, okay.
But I was talking to him in Calgary. He came out of the internet like most of us actually. Like,
Yeah. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. I haven't even barely seen
Yeah,
it.
well,
So I was given actually pretty much the same kind of direction from Shannon that Meredith was, which is basically like, I don't know, Flame Princess. It's like, okay, what else should I know about? And I actually hadn't even seen, I was still working through all the seasons. This is my favorite show, which is the only reason that I took this. I didn't really have the time for it. I wound up writing it in 2.5 weeks while I was teaching a class and still doing Girls with Slingshots full time.
Nicely done.
So if it sucks, it's because of that. Sorry. I actually don't even know if anybody likes it because nobody's read it yet. But it is about Flame Princess, and she has to go save Finn, essentially. I decided to just kind of flip it around and have her have to test out her, like, have that inner, challenge of, do I want to be evil or do I want to be brave and kind of heroic? So that's what it's about.
Sounds good.
Yeah, she's with Jake the whole time, too, so they kind of bicker, which is kind of cute.
It's funny, I've been asked in a lot of panels, like, how did you get this job of writing the comics, or how did they find you? And it's always such a boring answer, which is they emailed me, and I received the email and replied, and said, yes, I consent. So I'm not going to ask any of the cartoonists, but Mike and Steve, how did you get involved with the show?
I met Penn at a comic convention. It's just that. It's just hanging out with him, and he gave my comics. I didn't take the job at first. I didn't want to move to Los Angeles. I was going to move to Toronto instead. But then my wife is American, and so I wanted to take the job. I wanted to move to America.
Yeah, I was emailed. And
Cool story.
Phil Renee approached me because they needed someone on the design team, and they filled out a design test, and then they were like, cool, if you get this, could you move to LA? And I said, no. For a bunch of reasons. I got a girlfriend here at the time, and I couldn't drive, I can't drive or like bike, so I was like, I don't know if this is a city where I'd be able to like maneuver around. And then a few months later, they were like, can we just hire you here? And I said, sure. And that, yeah, not a very good story.
So everyone get an email account and be stubborn.
I have Gmail invites, you know. That's
sweet
pretty
Gmail
exclusive.
But we weren't just sitting in a pod before we got work. We went to the comic convention. That's I think the part of the story is that we all were working. And
Yeah, you had to work out there where people could see it.
So there's some advice for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the real story. Is people say, oh, I just say this email arrived, but I'd also been doing a comic for 10 years up to that point before the email arrived.
Well, and would I be mistaken to say that it's also partially because Shannon, for us at least, that Shannon really likes webcomics?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it helps to have an editor who likes comics, saying like, oh, that's why all these comics people are here. Are there any questions from the audience about Adventure Time? You're all here and no questions. There it is.
Right, I don't know if you're allowed to disclose this. The location of where Finn and Jake live, is there any information that you could reveal?
The question is, the location where Finn and Jake live, is there any information that can be revealed about that?
Like, do you mean like we're on Earth? Like, is it post-apocalyptic? So you mean like? I think it's pretty clear in the show. There's a lot of like skeletons and bus shelters and stuff, but I don't know where they are exactly. I don't know if fans have theories. I think I saw somewhere that fans had theories based on the information, what continent they're on, but I have no idea. I'm sorry.
I took a risk in the comic because I had them reading some writing, that I've made English, but I realized after I read the comic that I was like, wait, has this been established that there is actually English being written in the world?
Yeah, there's
And it had been, yeah. But
Yeah.
I was lucky that it had. Right there.
How sacred is the canon? Like, if you want to like make Finn get pregnant and have a baby and introduce that character, are you allowed to?
The question is, how sacred is the canon? I know from my experience, there's been one thing that I was told. I wasn't even told no. It was, we had this flashback in issue 4 with Marceline and the Ice King, and they were like, oh, I was talking to Penn actually, we kept going back and forth because we had this idea, and he was like, well, it's going to be on the show in a couple months, we don't want to just give it away. And then I wrote something new, and that was going to be on the show next season. I don't think it's come up yet.
Okay.
So I had the idea, and then the writers of the show had the same idea, so I had to drop that idea. But normally it's just like, I feel like their editorial process is, as long as it's good and cool, like it's fine. But you guys are on the show, you could probably speak more to that than I could.
I don't know, nothing, like I only was involved in co-boarding one episode, but it wasn't like, there was the one with Finn's hat coming to life. And there, I was weird because I was like, it was the first time I was involved in that aspect of things, so I like went on 4chan and like websites and like looked at comments. And everyone was really mad when I was like, what, you just got it from like a bear or whatever?
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I don't think they minded. They were just, like no one on the show, everyone was just like, yeah, if it's funny, you should go for it.
Yeah, I feel like if it doesn't, at least on the show, if it doesn't contradict something that's happened already, and if it's funny, it'll be pretty fine. Penn's real loosey-goosey with canon. Like I feel like he's real flexible on the rules. But yeah, I use 4chan a lot, and I use the Adventure Time Wikipedia for most of my information because I don't know what it is. Yeah, so that's good.
Back there.
What inspired Lemongrab's character? He seems kind of like dark and disturbed.
Oh, I don't know. he was there before. Yeah, Tom. I think that's.
Tom and Jesse.
Yeah, I know Tom Herbeck and Jesse Moynihan boarded the first episode. I don't know who came up. I'm sorry. I have no idea.
You might have already been there. Just
Sure.
always existing.
Yeah.
An eternal creature.
Just need to come to the light.
This is a question mostly for like the writers. Adventure Time has like a really unique voice, and do you find it like difficult when you're writing your own sort of interpretation of the characters to stick to that voice, and like how much of your own voice are you comfortable putting in there?
I'll answer part of this. For me, I find it really helpful that it's a cartoon where there's different actors doing different voices because they're all so distinctive. And so I usually, almost exclusively, only write alone in a private room because you're writing comedy, and part of my writing process is trying to make a joke that makes myself laugh. And it's really uncool to be sitting there writing a joke and laughing at your own joke. Like, that is pretty good, so. But for the characters, I'll also try to mimic the voices, especially Lumpy Space Princess. All of her lines I'll say out loud in my Best Valley Girl impression to get it as close as I can, make sure it flows properly. So it isn't actually a matter of me emulating the voices to make sure that they fit.
Ryan, can we actually hear your Lumpy Space Princess?
It's so bad. It's really bad. You're gonna be disappointed, but here we go. Give me, what's a line? I'm not a writer. What does she say?
Brad.
Yeah, Brad. Something about Brad.
I'm so ready for you, Brad. My lumps are so ready for you.
Oh my God, my lumps are so ready for you, Brad. Not good. How about you guys?
I mean, when it came to writing the dynamic between Princess Bubblegum and Marceline, I sort of had this idea that, you know, largely comes from me, is that like I needed to create this dynamic where Marceline is off the rail and Bubblegum kind of has to reel her back. And as I was writing that, I was watching the new season coming out at the time, and there were episodes like Goliad and Cookie Princess, where Bubblegum is revealed to just be this empathy-free teenager. And I sort of tried to like keep that in mind when I was writing her stories, that she's not always being the control based on how much she cares, but how much she wants to be in charge of everything. So that was definitely the thing where I felt the most push and pull between the voice that I was trying to put into her and what she actually is.
Danielle, do you find that, especially for Flame Princess, which isn't, she hasn't been so much on the show?
Yeah, I was thinking like, you know, Finn and Jake are really easy to write, especially, I love that they all use the word y'all, because that just feels, they talk like I do. They say dude all the time and say y'all. But Flame Princess, because she hadn't really been established yet, I was actually a little nervous about trying to give her a unique name, or a unique voice, because I'm so used to writing my characters who, I don't want to say they're all the same or anything, but they are all friends who hang out together and have similar personalities. So, I don't know. I was kind of, I'm trying to remember what I wrote. I guess I was trying to go with the, like her being kind of, what's the word, like frustrated with life a little bit, like that transition that she's going from living in a lantern into finally being in control of herself and trying to figure that out. But yeah, actually I have no idea. I just wrote what I thought she'd say. I have no insight. That actually sounds good.
Good answer.
What's one aspect about the series that appeals to you the most or speaks to you the most?
The question is, what's an aspect, the one aspect of the series that appeals to you the most or speaks to you the most? For me, it's the relationship between Finn and Jake is very familial, like they're brothers, and I'm a guy who's has a pal-centric lifestyle. I really like friends, and so the fact that these two have put friendship at the core of a lot of what they do was really appealing.
I think I'll say I'm definitely like a girl who's into like guys like, you know, stuff and like Star Wars, and grew up with that very tomboy, and I really like that there's a very broad representation of female characters who, like, at the one hand they are all pink, but also are, you know, like a mad scientist at the same time, and like they all have very unique personalities and aren't just like, Finn and Jake will go on one adventure and we'll take one lady along like once in a while. Like that's like a typical trope that happens. Like they actually enter like their worlds here and there, so it's kind of fun.
This might be kind of an academic answer, but I like that the show, and not just, you know, like because it's an animated show, but like it's not afraid to explore the psychology of all of its characters. And sometimes the psychology is messed up. And it's amazing to just like watch episodes unfold that are they're not funny, but they're incredibly touching or really frightening. And I think that's the big thing about that show, is it kind of like just runs that emotional spectrum where like it's not just a comedy show, although it's really funny. It really just, it goes a lot of places that a lot of live action shows wouldn't go.
I like that, I feel like they have absolutely no fear letting, especially with Finn, that's what I like about him being like the main character. Even though he's a boy, he's totally got his insecurities and flaws, just kind of, not even really flaws, just insecurities that he shares with people, and he isn't afraid to, maybe he's a little embarrassed to cry sometimes, but he isn't afraid to just go ahead and talk about them. And I also like that they show the little slips of like, when somebody has something in their mind, they probably shouldn't say it, but they go ahead and say it anyway, and most of the time they're not laughed at or even paid attention to. It just kind of goes unpaid attention to, and those ones I find hilarious. It's like this subtle humor of, God, what you're really thinking and what you really shouldn't say, but sometimes you accidentally do say, and hopefully nobody notices. I love that.
When you're talking about pausing to try to remember, oh gee, is it actually established that they have written English in the world of Boom? That reminds me that the one thing that sort of like bothered me about the art of Adventure Time, if I had to nitpick, be that a few times that there is English, I haven't seen the foreign versions, but it's a little too obvious that it's like it's just a placeholder art that they kind of slap English on top, and they can put the other languages when it's translated for foreign release.
That it's typed out words and not handwritten words.
Yeah, so I was curious, like, what the comics you've done or the actual show, if there's anything you've looked back and thought, oh gee, I wish I could like redo that.
The question is, when you look back, what would you change? Stuff you maybe weren't satisfied with. For me, the way the comics are done now is that I write them my notes, and the first couple issues, I just saw them when they showed up in my mailbox, so I didn't get to give notes. And I write dialogue with kind of alternative punctuation, where I'll break some rules of grammar for comedic or for conversational effect, and those were corrected a lot early on. And I was like, oh no, this character is supposed to have 2 exclamation points after his line, and there's only 1, and the whole joke's ruined. And so now I get to say, actually, in page 3, panel 6, there's a missing exclamation point there, and you should fix it. It was a process to make that better.
As far as accuracy goes, the most disputed thing that I wrote in Marceline was I mentioned the existence of Iggy Pop, and it was so that Marceline could make fun of how the princess doesn't know anything about rock music, which was, I felt, an important point to deliver at the beginning. But people are kind of divided, where some of them are like, oh, but you're breaking the whole like post-apocalyptic thing by mentioning a contemporary artist, and then the other camp is like, but everyone would know about Iggy Pop like 1,000 years afterwards, right?
Also, Iggy Pop could just be,
Like, yeah.
yeah, or a different musician who happens to be named Iggy
the
Pop.
same name.
He's just like a little living mushroom or something.
Is there anything from the show you guys regret?
I think with the boarding, it happens so quickly. Like we do our first pass of the board and all the writing and most of the drawing in like a week. So like you're doing your best, but you see it on TV and there's always stuff that you kind of wish you did a different way. But it's TV. You move quick. You just kind of go through it. But no, it's also weird because what you draw in the board tends to show up exactly on screen the way you drew it.
As closely as we can get it.
And that's terrifying. It's terrifying when you draw like a weird looking Princess Bubblegum and then you watch it on TV and it's your weird looking Princess Bubblegum.
Like every now and then we'll change. Like you once boarded something and it required like a really specific type of engine or a motor. I forget exactly what it was.
Oh that's coming up.
Yeah. And like I was looking for a reference forever for it, and like I'm really bad at like vehicles and stuff. So I think I just drew what I wanted. So like,
that's fine.
I'll just like
Did I write like Studebaker motor?
Yeah. That's, and I was like looking for a really specific thing, and then like Google image search.
I don't think I even looked up the Studebaker motor. I think I just drew what I thought it would look like. But that's fine.
I like Vince Coletta you know.
That's okay.
That was a real look behind the curtain there.
Yeah.
Adventure Time, the show, has this real streak of risque edge underneath it a lot. Is that something that you try and emulate in the comic books? And is it something that's difficult to get the balance on?
The question is, Adventure Time has a risque edge to it, and is that something we try to emulate in the comic books? And
is it difficult to get the balance right?
Is it difficult to get the balance right?
I tried to throw in some little innuendos that were promptly taken down, so. I thought they'd kind of go under the radar. Like at some point the villain says to Flame Princess that she looks like an untrimmed bush. And I thought that was just subtle enough that it would get past.
That was subtle.
But she does look like an untrimmed bush, kind of, like an actual bush. But yeah, Shannon was like, no, you can't do that.
One thing that I wrote it, and then I thought for sure they wouldn't let it through, is in one of the comics they go to the future, and Finn and Jake end up in their future bodies, so they have older adult bodies. And at the end of it, Finn and Princess Bubblegum share a kiss, and Princess Bubblegum says something like, the 10-year age difference is a big deal when you're 16, it's not a big deal when you're 26 or 36, it gets smaller. And then I realized I had the mind of a 12-year-old in the body of an adult kissing another adult, and it was kind of weird, but no one cared. So.
I think mine's pretty tame. I mean, the only thing, and this is completely easy to do in Adventure Time, is when I'm implying that the band parties a lot, that's just sort of a thing that everyone understands, is you dance around and everything's crazy, and you don't need to imply drinking or drug use or anything that bands would actually be doing. So, no, I have nothing to add to this.
The lampshade on the head, just...
Right, exactly.
We've gone kind of both ways in like adapting a couple things, like in issue like 2 or 3 or something, Bubblegum is in the script, she's in a bikini, And so I was like, well, let's make it like a real cute kind of retro style bikini. And so we went back a little bit on that. But then in a one that we just finished the pencils for, I actually went forward a little bit.
What was it?
On a 17, Jake saves Finn by making his buns gigantic, and Finn bounces off and fights a monster, and Jake is like gone for the rest of the fight, and Finn comes back and says, "Hey, what happened? Well, you probably remember the dialogue better."
Yeah, you got it.
And it's like, well, I was just figuring out some personal stuff, and so so in the comic I played that up where he's rubbing his butt. I was just figuring out some personal stuff.
Butts is a really funny thing. Like when you draw comics, like there's always a time when someone's facing someone else, and you're like, oh, I don't want to. That's an unflattering shot. I can't draw like either crotch shots, butt shots, but you can do it in Adventure Time. Like, you can just like nurse those buns. It's fine. Like,
Got to commit to the butt shot.
yeah, it's totally cool.
Does Fractal Jake have infinite, increasingly tiny brains, and can you use them for incredible feats of cognition?
The answer is, does Fractal Jake have infinitely increasing tiny brains and use them for personal cognition? The answer is yes. As anyone who has studied fractals know, they go on forever, progressively smaller sizes. He's in the comic in the future. Jake turns into Fractal Jake, Fractal Glob Jake actually, which I wrote in partially because I wanted to see you guys draw infinitely small spirals. He did a good job.
We tried. It was as infinite as the page and the schedule would allow.
Here's a question that I would like to ask you in public now. I write the comic knowing I won't have to draw it.
Yeah.
What's the worst stuff I've given you?
Oh, well, there's always a page like here and there where it says, and everyone in ooze
An army of sand, Finns, and Jakes. And,
and we sort of like thumbnail this out, like, and we do like circle, circles, and depending on like who's sort of like penciling that in, and like it's sort of like, I think I'm really good at like layering so that it's just like, right back, like I'm seeing this crowd here, but Braden will draw like from up here, so that you're drawing like everyone, and I'm like, no. But he's like, but he called for everyone.
It needs to happen something. You need the big, glory,
Yeah. Something I've discovered about writers is really easy to type out the word 1,000.
Yes.
I'm assuming. Is it hard for you? Is it?
I don't even notice it.
Okay,
it just doesn't register. What about on the show? Is there stuff that you get and you're like, oh god, I have to draw?
I'm really bad at drawing cars. Like that's when I'm always like, feel like I'm about to lose my job. I'll get a note back and it'll be like, yeah, when you like draw a car, it doesn't get like wider in the back. I'm like, oh, no, I haven't learned perspective. I'm like, yeah, stuff like that.
Crowds. I feel like there's a lot of episodes where there's going to be a big audience and everyone interacting. Done a few things with a lot of people dancing. So we do the borders, you have to pose out. Like in Bahoy, there's that whole little festival dance, and you have to pose on the little pillows, dancing together. It's sweet, but it takes a long time. It's a little...
And it shows up for like 10 seconds.
Yeah, no one sees it.
Does BMO have a gender identity?
Does BMO have a gender identity?
I think it's pretty liquid. I think it's not exact. I feel like BMO is he more than she, but I think it's pretty flexible.
So one of my favorite issues was Choose Your Own Adventure Time. What was working on that like? What was your favorite path? Like I chose one with farts and violence.
The question was Choose Your Adventure Time saying was a very good issue, which thank you. And what was that like? What was the script like? What did you like working on it?
Oh my god, it was...
So I wrote a script that it had the dialogue, and then I was like, this is impossible. And so I ended up, the only time I sort of drew these really rough panel layouts, but it was me on a piece, I think it was like lined paper with paneling. It was really terrible. And I started drawing the panel layouts, but I would draw a box the size of your thumb to represent a panel. And then I realized I crammed a lot of panels out of these pages.
Yeah, it was definitely like, that was the first time you have a script and a flow chart, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
It's basically a flow chart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was amazing.
And we stuck to the layout a lot too.
Because we just had that room for the arrows, and if that's already sort of established, we kind of tried to just go with that.
Yeah, that's one that we actually lettered ourselves because there was no way that we were just going to submit art and expect that the letterer would know exactly where everything goes. So we're like, we'll just do it all.
And actually, you guys saved that comic because I didn't have the idea of making the arrows different colors, which makes it legible. It would not have been legible if you guys hadn't come up with that idea. So thank you.
When you guys put, or I guess not you guys, but when they put the Harka Vagrant Shetland pony into the show, because it sort of had like an appearance, the fat pony, was that like the first instance of webcomics and Adventure Time kind of starting to emerge, or were things in motion before that, or was that kind of precipitating everything?
I wasn't working on the show back then, but I know that Penn's good friends with Kate, so I think, but yeah, he's always, like, Penn comes from webcomics, so I feel like it's pretty mushy.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of it is, you know, coming from that circle, you sort of know people and you, like, hey, I like your fat pony, and I put it in my cartoon show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've noticed there's not a lot of like references made. Yeah.
Sorry?
There's not a lot of references made in the show. Like
No,
to
that's
other
pretty much
things.
the only one I can think of.
Just, like, appreciate that. It's neat when like one thing comes up, but is that something that do you ever like sneak something in and then like, in a storyboard or something like that, and then you're asked like, is it intentional?
No, I try not to. I feel like the internet gets brought up sometimes, but I feel like it's just somehow still the I try to. I'm not a big fan of references or like hidden messages, but yeah, I feel like everyone on the show tries to keep that pretty tight, pretty low.
You don't sneak anything into props, Mike?
I once tried to put a Crass logo on, I think Marceline's binder shows up, or journal, but then they were like, no. And I also realized that logo is like a subversion of a swastika. It's like against it. But I was like, that makes sense that it was after.
Couldn't get a swastika on the show. Any other questions? We've answered. Oh, sorry.
Just following on from that, like there's no references in the show or the comics. There's a lot of mashups and crossovers on the internet. I've seen like cross-ups with Invader Zim, Futurama, Pokemon. I saw a guy wearing a Pokemon Adventure Time t-shirt yesterday. Are there awesome ones that you've seen, or are you like, would there be ones that you would love to make?
This isn't quite the same thing, but I saw someone on Etsy who had cut up the comics and turned them into shoes somehow. Like she made shoes out of the comics. And I was like, I've written for shoes. This is
It's not exactly the same. The Toronto cartoonist Sue Kim did a thing where she had Jake as two pieces of bread and bubblegum in the middle, and it was PB&J. I got so mad that I didn't come up with that. I can't believe she was like the first person to do that. Yeah. She's also a storyboard artist on the show now. So.
We do sketch covers, so we like to take commissions from people, and it's rare, but sometimes people will ask for, you know, Jake dressed as Doctor Who or something, or, you know, Finn as Batman, and I always love doing those.
Yeah, I'm surprised that doesn't come up. Like I do the sketch covers in Shelli too, and like I'm surprised it doesn't come up more because it's such an incredibly popular thing on the internet. Like the Adventure Time tag on Tumblr is that's half of it. It's just mashups. Yeah.
What's the other half?
Don't lock the doors.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
That's the craziest one, I think.
That's one. Breaking Bad with Jake as Walter White and Finn as as Jesse saying scientifical. So that was it.
Will we ever find out why this girl is always trying to kill Jake? Because I mean, he's tried many times.
Yeah.
You give him letters and try to kill him.
Sure. I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Do you think there would ever be a Adventure Time Bravest Warriors crossover in the near future?
I know that they're trying to keep both of those things very far apart right now. And I don't know, possibly in the future. Like, I don't want to say anything, I don't know. But I do know that they'd like to keep the two properties separate, more or less. Except for, like, you know, obviously that they put Pendleton Ward's name on both of them. Like, yeah.
It can be like when Norm and Cliff show up in Wings.
Yeah.
Like a really small.
Yeah, just in the background.
Yeah.
Just walk by, make it a whole super continuity.
Were they traveling together?
Yeah, the idea was like their flight was delayed, so they were just stuck there, you know.
We all saw that episode of Wings.
Yeah. They're all young people.
Did Wings take place like around?
It was the same creator.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then maybe they're on a train. Like I don't remember the logistics.
It's a small airport.
What's your process for creating new characters and lands, and like a new type of people?
The question is, what's the process for creating new characters, lands, and people? I could probably ask all of you this question. My answer is, I, again, play the writer card for Desert Princess in the first comic. I think I gave her like 2 lines of description, and that's like 1 sentence split across 2 lines in the line break. And then Braden and Shelli sent different sketches, and I got to choose the one I liked. Like I'm some millionaire lounge guy. Like, yes, that one, please. So I really enjoy the process.
I look at them now, I'm like, it had to be that one.
Yeah, it was so cute.
Just because, well, did that actually inform how she was written?
Yeah,
Maybe?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
As soon as I knew what she looked like, I could write her better.
I guess I had a couple of characters that I decided to put. I mean, not really characters. One is just the villain, which is kind of a villain, kind of a dragon character. But I hardly had any contact with Zach at all, actually. I think we shared one email, which was like, "Are you working on this?" "Yes, I am." Okay. So I didn't know how he was going to want to have direction, so I just didn't really give him any. But I think for a couple of the characters in there that I had in mind, and like there's this crazy carnival game that Finn plays, I would just draw it out myself. And this is kind of my first time doing just the writing instead of the drawing. I'm used to doing that. It's been interesting trying to just do the writing without knowing how it's going to turn out. So I would just do drawings and then like send it. I don't think I sent them to him. I have worked with another writer though, where I would like send her the drawings that I did and be like, "It's in a separate email that I've just sent to you, but if you want to look at them, open it. If not, delete it. You know, just go your own way and do that sort of thing." So hopefully with the next book that I do with him, it will be that way, so I can actually have more communication. And but honestly, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because now I'm looking at his stuff and I'm like, oh my god, that is so much better than I would have ever come up with. It's really cool playing God over a bunch of really talented artists.
Steve, when do you put in a new character?
Oh, like when does that show up in the show? Or
when? I mean, for me, I sort of try to use an existing character as one that fits the mold already.
Sure. I've been just trying to make new characters. It's fun. Nothing that's been on the air yet, but a lot of characters are either going to be just people who I find funny, or a couple of characters who I feel like I can relate to. And there's one that I did just purely based on a stand-up comic that I really liked, because I wanted us to be able to cast him, and then it worked.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's a good character. We'll show him next year.
Something to look forward to.
How would you guys feel about if there was like a full-length Adventure Time movie being made?
The question is, how would you guys feel if there was a full-length Adventure Time movie being made?
It'd be fun.
I feel like the nature of the show really favors the serial format. I kind of hate when things, worlds as vast as Adventure Time are boiled down to a story with a start and a finish. I feel like part of the fun of Adventure Time is the idea that it never ends. Oh, just like in the theme song.
Yeah, if you look at the, say the Futurama direct-to-DVD movies and stuff like that, like, they're good. There's some good stuff in there, but they lose, in trying to make it a 90-minute thing, they lose a lot of the brevity that kind of makes, and even that's a half-hour show. Adventure Time's 11 minutes. That kind of makes everything, like all the jokes come, like hit really, really nice and tight and everything. So I figure, like, part of me would be like, that would be really cool, but yeah, the word would be that it would be too much.
I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Do you guys usually check for continuity errors? Or have any issues with that?
Questions, do you guys check for continuity errors or have any issues around that? Because I noticed one.
What did you notice?
I just, the one where Finn's missing his sock.
Yeah, people were mad about that.
Yeah.
One of the first episodes I boarded, I had Marceline flying on the finger of a giant over top of the clouds, and I forgot that she can't be underneath the sun, and it was a blue sky, and she was just out there, and they released a commercial of like coming up next season and all that, and Reddit got so mad. So mad.
They're always kind of
mad. And thankfully there was enough time to like somehow turn blue sky just gray, so it's like clouds underneath and clouds on top. so she was fine. But,
I submitted my whole first issue with no vampires ever shielded from the sun, and Shannon sent it back and she's like, can you just draw hats on them and all these scenes? And that set the precedent, like it's totally fine just as long as they wear hats.
I've noticed while you do animation, you also played with like doing computer animation as well in the episodes. Have you ever thought about other types, like maybe stop animation or just doing like an episode with live action actors just to switch it up?
Yeah, I think there's always talk about that. I think
even live action.
I don't know. I think Penn's always really open to if there's a creator that he really likes, like David O'Reilly did this last CG episode, and like he does such cool stuff, and I think Penn and people on the show just liked him so much that they just want to give him his own episode. And I feel like if there was someone doing that in live action, or like I feel like it's to give different creators their own episode in the seasons. I feel like that's going to keep happening. People really like that.
It gives the episodes like a special feel.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, all right. Last question.
Just speaking to the continuity question, in Marcy and Simon, Marcy always just walks around in sunlight, like.
I think technically.
Was she less vampire then, or?
I think she was just a demon.
She doesn't have the bites.
Oh, does she not? Yeah, but she's got. But she's still
like.
That
she's not a vampire in that episode? Yeah, she's a demon. Like her father's a demon, so she's a demon and a vampire.
It fixes all the problems. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy.
I need something to transition on, so it's gonna be you.
And I want to like do everything. I want to like watch.